The sun bleeds out across a shattered French hedgerow. It's dusk. The air is thick with the metallic tang of cordite and burnt fuel. For a German panzer crew hunkered down in their steel beast, there's a moment of grim satisfaction. 2 American Shermans sit dead in the field, tracks shattered, thick smoke curling from their engine decks like funeral pyres. A sharp, brutal armor clash is over. They've won. For now, relief is a quiet, whispered thing. But as true darkness falls, a new kind of sound stitches itself into the night. Not the cough of rifles or the crump of mortar, but something else entirely. The low growl of heavy-duty engines, the high-pitched song of winch cables straining under immense weight. Blue-white flashes of a welder's torch intermittently light up the faces of men working with a frantic, focused energy. The Germans watch, confused, then horrified. By dawn's first light, the impossible happens. The 2 dead tanks, the ones they personally knocked out, are idling. Their turrets slew. Their main guns point defiantly back towards the German lines. The tank crews, soot-stained but alive, wave a gesture of thanks to a group of mechanics covered in grease and grit. The shock is palpable. The enemy isn't just numerous. They seem to have an almost supernatural ability to resurrect their fallen machines. They repair faster than you can kill. This wasn't magic. It was the doctrine of the U.S. Army Ordnance Corps, a revolutionary approach that treated a damaged tank not as a loss, but as a temporary problem to be solved right there on the battlefield. This was a war of logistics and repair, fought under fire, on muddy roadsides, and in bombed-out orchards. The American secret weapon wasn't just the factory. It was the forward-deployed mechanic with a wrench in his hand. This incredible feat was built on a pyramid of skill, a chain of maintenance echelons designed to push expertise and spare parts as close to the front as bullets. At the very tip of this spear were the ordnance contact teams and recovery crews, the battlefield surgeons of the armored divisions. They were equipped with a cast of mechanical titans that became characters in their own right. You had the M32 and M31 tank recovery vehicles, powerful Sherman variants with their main guns replaced by heavy booms and winches, capable of towing a fellow tank out of the mud under fire. For the heavier lifting, there were the hulking Diamond T and Ward LaFrance wreckers, 6-wheeled monsters that could hoist an engine block or drag a disabled half-track from a ditch with brute force. And then there was the king of them all, the M25, affectionately known as the Dragon Wagon. This colossal 40-ton tank transporter, a tractor and semi-trailer combination, could haul a wrecked Sherman, or even a captured German Tiger, off the battlefield like a prize bull. These machines and the men who operated them formed a relentless cycle of recovery and repair that drove enemy commanders to despair. A German gunner might perfectly zero his sights and an 88mm shell screaming into a Sherman's hull, and watch it burn only to see the exact same tank, identified by its unique markings, back on the line fighting against him 2 days later. It was demoralizing. It felt like fighting a hydra. This philosophy was forged in the heat of earlier campaigns. The lessons of North Africa's vast, unforgiving deserts taught the importance of self-sufficiency. Italy's narrow mountain roads and frequent river crossings tested the limits of recovery equipment and ingenuity. Each battle was a crucible, hardening the skills of these grease-stained soldiers. They were a unique brotherhood. An American mechanic with a lucky wrench and perpetually burned gloves might not have fired a shot in anger all day, but his work saved crews and kept the armored spearhead sharp. His contribution was as vital as the gunners. The stories became legend. Tanks pulled from rivers, engines swapped in the dead of night using nothing but a hand-cranked hoist and the light of a half-track as headlamps. And so, the rhythm of the front line wasn't just about attack and defense. It was about breakdown, recovery, and repair. A radio crackles to life in a muddy command post. The message is clipped, urgent. We have another one. Grid reference 0904. Sherman, track damage, but crew is safe. It's recoverable. The recovery officer, a weary captain with oil under his fingernails, takes a slow drag from a hand-rolled cigarette. He looks at his watch, then at the map. He exhales a cloud of smoke and says to his sergeant with quiet confidence, "All right, let's go get her. We'll have her back by morning." The call cracks over the radio. "Bail out, bail out." The crew is clear, scrambling for a ditch, but not before their commander marks the tank's position on his map. Back at the maintenance battalion, the alarm sounds. Before the dust has even settled on the knocked-out Sherman, an ordnance contact team is already rolling. A half-track, loaded with mechanics, welders, and a mountain of tools, tears across the churned-up landscape. They arrive on scene like a pit crew at a hellish Grand Prix. The first priority is security. Infantrymen from the nearest platoon form a perimeter, rifles scanning the dark tree line. If the position is too exposed, smoke canisters are thrown, creating a shifting, acrid screen. The team leader, a seasoned master sergeant, is already on his belly next to the crippled tank, flashlight beam dancing over the steel. He's making the call in seconds. Is it a mobility kill? A thrown track? Or is it a catastrophic fire, the interior a blackened, twisted mess? If the damage is manageable, the choreography begins. The crew works under the dim glow of blackout lights, or the eerie, drifting luminescence of a flare. A track pin has been sheared off. Sledgehammers ring against cold steel, driving the stubborn pin free. The new track sections are manhandled into place, each link weighing more than a man. A boogie truck has been shattered. The crew uses heavy jacks and pry bars to lift the tons of steel just enough to slide the wrecked unit out and wrestle a spare into position. Wrenches turn, bolts are tightened, and knuckles are split open on jagged metal. It's a brutal, greasy ballet performed against the clock. But what if the tank is too far gone for a field repair? That's when the beast arrives. The M32 tank recovery vehicle, a Sherman chassis converted into a mobile workshop and tow truck, lumbers forward. Its heavy A-frame crane swings into position. Thick tow cables, each link as big as a fist, are hooked onto the disabled tank shackles. With a groan of tortured metal and the roar of its engine, the M32 bites in and begins the slow, arduous process of dragging the dead weight back from the front, a ghost pulled by another ghost under the moonlight. The secret weapon here isn't just brute force. It's speed, drilled into every mechanic until it becomes doctrine. American industrial genius was built on standardization, and nowhere was that more critical than here. A carburetor from a tank in Able Company would fit a tank in Charlie Company. Magnetos, fuel pumps, final drive covers, all were interchangeable. Tool trucks arrived stocked with prepackaged spares. Wooden crates filled with parts that could service any Sherman variant in the battalion. The manuals were dog-eared, their pages stained with grease and coffee, but the procedures were known by heart, practiced until they were pure muscle memory. It's in the small details you see the real story. The chalk marks scrawled on the side of a damaged hull. A coded message for the depot crews further back telling them what needed to be fixed. The thermos of hot coffee passed from one grimy hand to another in the freezing pre-dawn chill, a small moment of shared humanity in the middle of chaos. This relentless efficiency was a lesson learned in blood and steel. In the open deserts of Tunisia, recovery teams worked under the constant threat of German 88s, teaching them the deadly importance of speed and concealment. They learned to retrieve most of their disabled tanks only under the cover of darkness. In Sicily, the narrow, winding mountain roads forced incredible ingenuity, using winches and improvised anchors to pull tanks back from the edge of cliffs. Then came the Italian winter, where mud froze solid and grease turned to concrete. Every bolt was a battle, every repair took twice as long, but it never stopped the work, the Germans noticed. Their intelligence reports started to fill with grudging observations. The Americans, one noted, retrieve a remarkable percentage of their disabled armor, often overnight. On the front lines, the sentiment was less academic. A captured German corporal, bitter and exhausted, put it more simply, "We knock them out, and they just answer with a wrench." That was the philosophy. Every tank saved was one less that had to be shipped from a factory 6,000 miles away. Every repaired engine was a middle finger to the enemy. And that's the image that sticks, a mechanic, face smeared with grease and exhaustion, leaning against the warm hull of a Sherman. He gives the ignition one more try. There's a cough, a sputter of black smoke, and then the radial engine roars back to life. A weary, triumphant grin spreads across his face. This tank will fight again tomorrow. But the lessons learned here, in the mud and the cold, were just a prelude. The greatest test of improvisation was yet to come, on the beaches and in the hedgerows of Normandy, where simple repair would have to evolve into radical reinvention. July 1944. The invasion is a month old and Normandy has become a cage. Not a cage of steel, but of earth and roots. They call it the bocage maze of sunken lanes walled in by ancient hedgerows. Dense embankments of soil and tangled vegetation, some 10 feet high and just as thick. For the American tankers, it's a death trap. Their powerful Shermans, designed for open country, are stuck. They try to climb the hedgerows, only to expose their thin belly armor to German Panzerfausts, waiting on the other side. They try to blast through, but the explosions just create another impassable crater. The breakout has stalled. The infantry is bleeding for every yard. In a muddy apple orchard, just miles behind the front, the 79th Infantry Division's Maintenance Battalion is wrestling with this problem. This isn't a gleaming factory. It's an open-air workshop under the dripping leaves. The air smells of churned mud, diesel, and apple blossoms. Here, the war isn't fought with grand strategy, but with grease guns and welding torches. The men of Ordnance are masters of improvisation. They read the ones who patch gaping holes in armor with scab plates of scrap steel, who cannibalize 3 wrecked tanks to make 1 good one, who hang spare track links on hulls, hoping it'll stop a German shell. The problem of the hedgerows isn't an abstract concept for them. It rolls into their orchard every day, in the form of battered Shermans with dead crews. Then, one day, a sergeant named Curtis Cullen has an idea. He's been looking at the massive steel obstacles the Germans had littered all over the invasion beaches, the so-called Czech hedgehogs. What if, instead of going over the hedgerows, they could cut asterisk through asterisk them? He sketches a crude design on a piece of scrap paper, a set of sharp steel teeth to be welded to the front of a tank. The idea travels like wildfire. There's no time for committees or blueprints. The battalion's chief warrant officer grabs the sketch, grabs a cutting torch, and gets to work. Using steel salvaged from the German obstacles, they begin to fabricate the first prototype. The air fills with the sharp hiss of the torch and the smell of burning paint and hot metal. Welders, their faces hidden behind dark masks, stitch the crude tusks onto the front glacis plate of a Sherman. A sketch at noon becomes a working reality by evening. They test it on a nearby hedgerow. The Sherman revs its engine, lurches forward, and hits the earthen wall. Instead of climbing, the steel teeth dig in. With a groan of protesting metal and a shower of dirt and roots, the tank plows straight through, emerging on the other side like a furious steel boar. It works. They call it the Rhino. The orchard transforms into a frantic assembly line. Every welder, every cutter is put to the task. Orders fly. We need another set for Charlie Company. Get that M10 fitted and back to the line. The pace is relentless. A Sherman limps in at dusk, its gun tube bent, a track sheared clean off. The mechanics descend on it. All night they work replacing the damaged track, swapping the barrel with one salvaged from a wreck, and, as a final touch, welding on a freshly made Rhino. By dawn, it's rolling out a new beast ready for the hunt, capable of bursting through hedgerows at 10 miles an hour. From a camouflaged foxhole, a German grenadier watches in disbelief. For weeks, he's known the hedgerows are his greatest ally. He's seen American tanks become helpless, easy targets. But now something has changed. Without warning, the hedgerow in front of him simply explodes. A Sherman tank, a monster with steel tusks, erupts from the earth where no tank should be, its machine guns already chattering. The rules have just been rewritten. For the American mechanics, success is measured in tanks returned to the fight, in minutes saved getting them there. For the tankers, it's more personal. They bring gifts to the grease-stained men in the orchard cartons of cigarettes, bars of chocolate. Before a mission, a crewman might superstitiously run his hand over the rough weld beads of his Rhino, a prayer in steel forged in a Normandy apple orchard. The Germans, facing this new threat, mutter about the Materialschlacht, the battle of material. They fight with tactics and courage, but how can they compete with an enemy that can invent a solution to their strongest defense and deploy it by the hundreds in a matter of days? It's a war of production, and they are losing. The breakout is coming. The Rhino is the key that will unlock the bocage. As Bradley's Operation Cobra is about to launch, the maintenance crews know their work is far from over. They prepare their recovery vehicles, readying for a war of movement, a war of speed across the fields of France. The lessons of rapid, standardized field modification are about to be put to the ultimate test. Out on the horizon, the elite German Panzer Division is moving to counterattack, setting the stage for a clash of armor and wits at a place called Arracourt. The autumn of 1944. The steel giants that dominated the battlefields of Europe are now locked in a desperate, rolling fight. In the fog-shrouded fields of Arracourt, and later on the frozen roads of the Ardennes, A new kind of war is being waged, a war not just of combat, but of survival and resurrection. For the tankers and the mechanics, the battle doesn't end when the guns fall silent. It's a 24-hour cycle where destruction and repair are two sides of the same worn coin. Imagine the scene. Gray dawn breaks over a shattered landscape. A Sherman and a Panther trade shots in a deadly close-range duel. An hour later, one of them is a smoking wreck. But by afternoon, the battlefield changes. Through lingering smoke and the occasional shell burst, huge M25 Dragon Wagon wreckers, the unsung heroes of the armored divisions, weave their way forward. They aren't just vehicles. They are lifelines, hooking onto the wounded tanks and dragging them from the kill zone with a practiced, almost casual efficiency. As night falls, the real work begins. Behind the lines, under the dim hooded glow of blackout lights, a hidden world of frantic activity comes alive. A massive tank engine, a heart of steel and iron, hangs suspended from a chainfall. Men in thick parkas, their breath turning to steam in the frigid air, wrestle with seized bolts, their curses lost to the wind and the distant rumble of artillery. The cold is a relentless enemy. It makes steel brittle, prone to cracking under stress. It turns engine oil and lubricants into thick, useless sludge. A simple task becomes a monumental effort, but ingenuity is the currency of survival. The Americans have countermeasures for the cold's cruelty. Portable preheaters are wheeled up to stubborn engines, their hot air coaxing life back into the frozen metal. Canvas wraps are thrown over engine decks to trap precious warmth. Tire chains are hammered onto the wheels of supply trucks, fighting for grip on icy roads. The one constant is movement. Hands that stop moving, even for a moment, risk freezing solid. Every soldier, every mechanic learns that stillness is a luxury they cannot afford. This relentless cycle of repair highlights a stark contrast between the two opposing forces. American recovery units, backed by a seemingly endless supply chain, operate with an astonishing elasticity. German officers would later write with a mix of frustration and awe about the unceasing reappearance of American tanks they were certain they had destroyed. A Sherman knocked out in the morning could, and often would, be back on the line by evening, a testament to the robust American logistical system. For the German crews, the reality is far more grim. Their magnificent Panthers and Tigers, though technologically superior in many ways, suffer from fragile final drives and a voracious appetite for fuel, a resource that is becoming catastrophically scarce. Their recovery assets are few and far between. A bogged-down heavy tank is often a death sentence for the machine. Lacking the heavy wreckers or the fuel to run them, German crews are often faced with a bitter choice: abandon their prized Panzer to be picked apart by Allied fighter bombers, or destroy it themselves with demolition charges. The orders are clear: what can't be moved must be blown. Let's step into an American ordnance tent. A captain scans a casualty log. On paper, it looks like a defeat. A list of tanks knocked out, penetrated, immobilized. But then his finger lands on a column at the far right of the page. Return to service. He looks up from the clipboard, at the silhouettes of his men bending over gearboxes, their faces lit by the warm glow of a potbelly stove. He knows the true measure of their strength isn't just in the tanks they field, but in the ones they bring back from the dead. He just points and tells his men to keep turning wrenches. As the Battle of the Bulge intensifies, this cycle reaches a fever pitch. The forests thicken with snow, bridges ice over, and the fighting becomes a brutal, close-quarters affair. A battalion might be fought down to a handful of operational tanks by dusk, its remnants holding a desperate line. But just behind them in those makeshift workshops, the miracle of resurrection continues. Mechanics, exhausted beyond belief, catch a few minutes of sleep under the belly of a tank, only to be jolted awake by the scream of incoming artillery. They shake it off, grab a tool, and go right back to work. And then, as a new day dawns over the Ardennes, a remarkable sight unfolds. A column of tanks prepares to move out, to rejoin the fight. But this column is twice as long as it was at midnight. The dead have risen. They've been resurrected by Greece, by tireless training, by an army of mechanics, and by a mountain of spare parts that stretches all the way back to the factories of Detroit. The line holds, not just through firepower, but through sheer, bloody-minded endurance. This is the taut edge of victory, forged in the frozen mud and the fire of the mechanic's torch. Early 1945. The Ardennes snow has melted into a sea of mud. The Allies are pushing. A relentless tide surging toward the Rhine. For one German non-commissioned officer, peering through his binoculars, the war has become a blur of exhaustion and retreat. He scans the American advance, the endless column of Sherman tanks. Then his blood runs cold. He adjusts the focus, wipes the lenses, and looks again. There's no mistake. It's the hull number. The very same tank his gun crew had knocked out burning just 2 days ago. He'd celebrated that kill. Now, here it was, its cannon pointed at his homeland, as if resurrected from the dead. And in that moment, a devastating certainty lands on him. This isn't just a war of soldiers and steel. It's a race between a gun sight and a toolbox. And the toolbox is winning. This wasn't a fluke. This was the American secret weapon, a force multiplier that German high command could never truly comprehend. The maintenance machine. While a German Panther or Tiger tank, once knocked out, was often lost for good, an American Sherman was merely wounded. High recovery rates, a staggering 70% or more, meant that what looked like a tactical victory for a German gunner was often just a temporary setback for the Allies. Attrition, the grim math of warfare, had been flipped on its head. How did they do it? It was a symphony of industrial might played out in the mud and rain. The Sherman's standardized design was key. Parts were interchangeable, engines could be swapped with shocking speed. A well-drilled crew of mechanics, shivering under a canvas tent in the middle of a European winter, could pull a 500-horsepower engine, replace it, and have a tank ready to fight again in a matter of hours. They were industrial wizards, performing miracles by lamplight. And feeding this machine was the legendary Red Ball Express. A constant stream of trucks, driving day and night, brought not just fuel and ammunition, but the lifeblood of the repair effort. Spare engines, transmissions, boogie wheels, and welding rods. This wasn't just logistics. It was a lifeline. It meant that welders could stitch up torn armor plates in the freezing sleet, and drivers of the mighty Dragon Wagon recovery vehicles could brave mined roads in total blackout, guided only by instinct, to haul a 30-ton piece of hope back from the brink of destruction. These men, the grease-stained mechanics and fearless drivers, were the unsung heroes of the armored divisions. Their impact was profound. A captured German tanker, when interrogated, summed it up with grudging respect. "We knew how to fight," he said, "but you fight with factories on wheels." The sentiment was mirrored on the other side, but with a different perspective. An American mechanic, writing a letter home, penned a line that captures the soul of their effort. "I've never fired a shot in anger," he wrote, "but I count every tank I've put back in the line as a crew of boys who get to go home." This incredible speed of repair did more than just shock the enemy. It shortened battles by keeping combat power at the front. It saved countless lives by returning a crew's familiar, trusted tank to them. It was a gritty, unglamorous, and absolutely decisive factor in winning the war. The toolbox, in the end, was more powerful than the gunsight. These are the kinds of stories we love to tell, the untold histories from behind the lines where courage, ingenuity, and sheer grit changed the outcome of the war. If you found this as fascinating as we do, please hit that subscribe button and join us for more deep dives into the events that truly shaped our world. Thanks for watching.